No matter the fear, anxiety, or inner conflict, sex was my drug of choice, and I always went back for more. I had a few drinks now and then, but I didn't need booze to screw up the courage to talk to women. I had no trouble making advances or starting a conversation. And anyway, I quickly learned that it didn't take a whole lot of witty banter to interest a woman. I was in a band, and that was enough to make me desirable. Drinking more heavily or doing drugs didn't appeal to me. I never wanted to lose control. I was dealing with newfound freedoms and opportunities, and I wanted to remain lucid and remember it all. But drugs were around from the earliest days of the band. People showed up at the venues, at the motels, and at the radio stations and record shops where we did promo appearances and wanted to befriend us. The guys threw drugs at us, and the women threw their bodies. I had use for only one. The road crew, on the other hand, picked up the various colored pills that fans threw on the stage and gobbled them down like Skittles. It freaked me out. You don't even know what you just ate. One morning I went to our pyro guy's room and there was no answer. I pushed the door open and he was huddled in the corner with a blanket over his head, looking green and unable to move. I didn't see the fun in that. The fact that nearly everyone in the rock world was high definitely contributed to my socializing less. Drugs were part of the culture, and not doing drugs set me apart. The fact that I wasn't doing blow or taking pills made other people uncomfortable. The fact that they were uncomfortable made me uncomfortable. My interactions with groupies and other women, on the other hand, were purely sexual, and drug use rarely came up. I couldn't imagine a better rush than having a woman want to go back to my room with me. Ace was an alcoholic, but in the beginning he stayed sober until after the show, at which point it was normal for him to drink until he was unable to stand. It was still funny then. For me, the ultimate gauge of whether his drinking was a problem was whether he was doing his job, and he was. What he wanted to do offstage was his business. One night I found him crawling down the hall of a motel on all fours, talking to himself. "What are you doing, man?" I asked him. "I've got my little people with me," he said, gesturing around himself. As I tried to get past him, he said, "Oh, you just stepped on one." In some ways it was pathetic, but in other ways I have to say it was funny. We laughed at Ace a lot, and not in a demeaning way. He was amusing. He was an oddball. He constantly told jokes. Only later did it become ugly. Once he mixed in Valium and cocaine, it wasn't as funny anymore. Initially, though, he was just a likable kook. At one point, Ace got the nickname the Chef. With the exception of Gene, who never took his clothes off or showered in front of anyone else, we often didn't wear a lot in the dressing room before or after a concert. One night, while we were sitting in front of our mirrors putting on our makeup, Peter walked up behind Ace and put his dick on his shoulder. Ace very nonchalantly turned to the side and gave it a kiss. So he became the chef, because he had to taste everything. We also called Ace Scraps back then because he often reached across the table and took stuff off our plates. "Are you eating that?" he'd ask, and then grab. We all had breakfast and dinner together on the road. The breakfasts at cheap motels were pretty much the same: scrambled eggs and toast and those little cups of grape jelly you peeled the top off of. Dinner varied. If someone had shrimp, Ace would eat the tails you left on the plate. Sometimes in motels, he would rummage through discarded room service trays as we walked down the hallways. It wasn't unusual to spend 10 or more hours a day in the station wagon together. Ace kept us laughing. One time Peter, who was older than all of us and had a long, mopey face, said, "I have the baby face in the band." Ace said, "Yeah, maybe a baby walrus." Another time in the car, Ace said, "I could really use a drink." This was not unusual for Ace. "You can drink my cologne," I said. "Really?" "Sure," I said. "Cologne is alcohol." So he screwed off the spray cap and took a swig of my Aramis. He spit it right out. We all laughed, including Ace. I thought of us as the Four Musketeers and figured we'd be together forever. We were the Vikings, the Huns, the Mongols, wreaking havoc in every town we invaded. We were the Beatles skiing down the hill in Help. We were Kiss. There was a genuine sense of camaraderie as we ate together, traveled together, got dressed for a show together, and played together, and on stage, we were a unified force. It wasn't real life, of course, and when we occasionally went home for brief stretches, we didn't see each other at all. On the road, though, we were Kiss, and it was fun to be Kiss. I knew we would work through and beyond this phase. There was almost a wistfulness. I was conscious that we were living this quaint rock and roll existence on the way to stardom, because stardom was never a question in my mind. We are going to make it. Bill set up promotional appearances at local papers, radio stations, and record shops at every possible opportunity. After a few months, we began to get a little big for our britches, moaning about having to do appearances. One afternoon, when we were supposed to get dressed and go to a record store, we decided we weren't going to show up. Fuck it. Bill was out with us at the time, and he came storming to our motel rooms, gathered us together, and yelled, "Are you kidding me?" We told him we didn't feel like doing it. We felt like it was a waste of time and maybe even beneath us. "You guys are acting like you've qualified for the Olympics or something," he scolded. "You're not even contenders yet." We looked at each other and said, "Oh." We put on our makeup. We went to the record store. We listened to Bill, and he was almost always right. Neil, on the other hand, approached things from an entirely different philosophy, learned during his Buddha days, and seemed to find nothing wrong with jeopardizing an act's potential career longevity for the chance of a hit single today, no matter how trite or substandard. He got us into a recording studio in early spring 1974 to do a cover of an old Bobby Rydell song called Kissin' Time. He told us it was promotional music for a kissing contest, an idea that was contrary to everything I envisioned for the band. I thought it was tacky. The bands I looked up to wouldn't do something like that, but Neil assured us our recording would be used for background music in a radio spot for the contest, nothing more. Of course, no sooner had we cut the not particularly great rendition of the song than Neil issued it as a single. He had a unique way of dealing with things sometimes. After the single was released and the kissing contest was rolled out on some radio stations around the country, Neil scheduled us to appear at one of the contests being held at a record store. I walked in there in full makeup, feeling very full of myself, and strolled over to a couple who had their lips locked. I bent down, we had our platform boots on, and the guy, while keeping his lips in contact with the girls, looked out of the side of his eyes and said, "Who the hell are you?" They were just two kids in a kissing contest. They had no idea it had anything to do with us. "Never mind," I said, and made for the door as quickly as my studded heels would carry me.